Right, so we all know that the Championship is the hardest league in football. Doesn't matter what country you go to, Italy, Spain, Germany. I don't think there's anywhere else that's really relevant, really. France. But the Championship is by far the trickiest league to get promoted from. And it's very, very easy, once you're down in the Championship, to be stuck in the mire, essentially. As a Leeds fan, we know this all too well. We've been stuck in the lower leagues for 16 years now. And I am so thankful that we don't have to be in there anymore, now that we're in the Premier League. But I'm going to do what many consider to be an impossible task, and that is predicting the Championship 2021 season table, and see what happens. Now, one of the reasons the Championship is so difficult is because all of the teams there are very even. Any team can beat any other on their day. There's no clear hierarchy, which makes predicting it very, very difficult. Like my Premier League predictions, we're going to start at the bottom with my relegated teams, and then we're going to work our way up. Let me know in the comments if you agree with what I've said, or if you disagree. You know, post what your table would look like, and yeah, I think that'd be great. Right at the bottom, in 24th, I've gone for Sheffield Wednesday. Now, Sheffield Wednesday, we know, will be starting with a 12-point deduction issued by the EFL. So they're a pretty safe bet to be relegated. But even coming towards the end of this season, they really didn't look hot at all. Big losing streaks, Gary Monk just not looking like he had any kind of clue at all. And in terms of players, there isn't really a solid backbone there. Barry Bannon, I suppose, is a ray of hope, but with a 12-point deficit to the rest of the league in an incredibly competitive scene, I don't see Sheffield Wednesday getting near the points needed for survival. In 23rd, I've gone for Rotherham United. Now, it always pains me to put a team that have just been promoted straight back down, but with Rotherham, I feel like there is, it's a safe bet. Rotherham are one of the biggest yo-yo clubs from League One to the Championship in recent memory, obviously going down last year, I believe. They finished second in League One, so they're just one of those teams that they just can't figure out which league they want to be in. Very small budget, and again, I think they will struggle very heavily in the Championship. It is so competitive, and I really don't see anything about Rotherham that are gonna keep them up. In 22nd, and my final team to be relegated from the Championship this year, will be Birmingham City. A little bit of a surprising one. Now, Birmingham were, statistically speaking, the worst team since football restarted from the lockdown in the Championship. Apart from Hull, of course. I think they only managed to get 1 win and 2 draws, and the rest were all defeats. They were mathematically safe before going into the final weekend, but they ended up just one place above due to the fact that everyone else was winning, and they just kept losing. If they weren't mathematically safe from quite a distance, they would have been a sure bet for relegation, because they weren't picking up any wins. Pep Clotet leaving the club, obviously leaving them in a little bit of turmoil. And obviously, you know, they'll have some money from selling off Jude Bellingham, but they need to put that money somewhere. They need to invest it smartly. Otherwise, I see Birmingham going down, and it's a real shame, because I quite like Birmingham as a club, fairly big. In 21st, and just surviving relegation, I've gone for Wycombe Wanderers. Now, what a story that would be if Wycombe survive relegation. Possibly one of the smallest clubs ever to be promoted into the Championship. And on paper, it's very easy to say that, you know, they're the weakest of the bunch and are probably going straight back down. But I really like Gareth Ainsworth as a manager. He seems to know his stuff. Wycombe seem like a tough team to break down. They seem solid at the back, and they do have some threats. Fred Onyedinma, obviously you've got Akinfenwa there as well. Pacey players, and they've got a style of play that's very difficult to break down. So they will frustrate quite a few teams. And I've got Wycombe staying in the Championship. How about that? In 20th, I've gone for Luton Town. Now, Luton have gone on a bit of a miracle run to stay up, and I applaud them hugely. They've been very difficult to beat since lockdown. Nathan Jones has done a really good job since coming back to the club. Obviously, there were some issues at the start when he left, but they seem to have got over that. Luton, though, are going to need to bring in some players. They are lacking very heavily in a kind of really talented core. I believe their most expensive player at the moment is their goalkeeper, Sluga. But they do have some decent players there. McManaman, I really like the look of. He can cause problems. But Luton, I think they're destined to be in that kind of bottom half of the table scrap for a while. Just above Luton, we have Barnsley. Now, again, Barnsley are one of those teams where they've just escaped relegation by the skin of their teeth. I do think that they are better than some of the teams coming up, but really I don't see them making a run far enough into the kind of the top half, middle pack of the Championship. I do like Barnsley a lot. They've got some old Leeds players, Apo Halmer, Clark O'Dore, and Alex Moa, of course. Now, when Leeds played Barnsley, I couldn't figure out how Barnsley were that far down the table. They were so aggressive. They played attacking football, and it just seems one of those cases where they've just been very unlucky. And they need consistency. Consistency is key in this league. And if Barnsley can show some, then they will probably get higher than I've rated them. Who have I got in 18th? My notes are so tiny I can barely read them. In 18th, we have Stoke City. Now, Stoke have had a pretty poor season. In fact, they've had a pretty poor campaign since coming down from the Premier League. Though those parachute payments really not being put to good use. They've got talented players. They have big names. Jack Butland in goal, an ex-England international player. Joe Allen, Tom Ince. You'd be lying to yourself if you said that Stoke just didn't have good players. But they seem to struggle on finding an identity and a style of play. I think that's going to continue. Again, middle of the pack mediocrity for Stoke, but I think they desperately need a revamp in their style if they're going to have any chance of getting a little bit higher up the league. In 17th, we are going for Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough managed to turn the back half of their season around after having a really, really poor campaign. They got rid of Jonathan Woodgate and brought in Neil Warnock, who is the Championship specialist. Does very well at seemingly dragging teams by the skin of their teeth into semi-decent positions. Now, I don't see Middlesbrough breaking into the top half of the table. They need a severe kind of revamp with players. They do need to bring in a little bit more talent, and I think actually be a little bit smarter in the loan market, because in the Championship it isn't about spending big and buying players, because that can really come back and bite you. It's about being clever with loans and getting the most out of those players. And until Middlesbrough can prove that, I'm not seeing them getting any higher than that. 16th, Bristol City. Now, Bristol have... what's the best way to describe Bristol? Streaky. They're a streaky team. They'll have winning runs that can go on for 4 games in a row, and then they can lose the next 5 quite easily. Under Lee Johnson, this was a big stereotype, but they parted ways with him, tried to make a good run at the end of the season. They couldn't make playoffs. And I think this all depends on which manager Bristol managed to get in. I think they were being actually linked with Eddie Howe after leaving Bournemouth. Whoever comes in at Bristol is going to need to have some time to steady the ship, essentially, and that's not going to happen, until the new year. Bristol are going to drop points, they are going to lose points, but they need to be patient, they need to have this time, have this year to rebuild, because that's essentially what I think Bristol are going to go through this year. 15th place, I've gone for QPR, Queen's Park Rangers. Now, if ever you wanted a kind of stereotypical middle-of-the-pack team, QPR are really that. They've had some exceptional standout players this year, but it's been kind of mired in mediocrity. They haven't been able to kind of go on that push, and it very much looks like those good players are going to be scavenged and pinched by Premier League teams. We know that Eberici Eze is looking at a Premier League move. Bright Osai Samuel is also being linked away. So QPR, it's all about investing this money that they're getting smartly. Because if the owners are dodgy with it and it doesn't go towards some good players, some youth talent, then they're not going to go. They're not going to get any further up the table, and then they're just going to be stuck in that midway point. In 14th, we have Reading. I really like Reading. In the playoffs, not too many seasons ago, I think 3 seasons ago, they lost to Huddersfield in the year that Huddersfield went up. But Reading have shown sparks of brilliance. Excellent players, Yaku Meite, John Swift as well, being linked away with some Premier League clubs. But inconsistency is the problem here with Reading, and for a lot of these teams in the mid-table. They have the firepower and the potential to beat any championship team on their day. But there's always a mistake there. There's always a bad off day. And these happen more often than not. So, I really hope that Reading can mount a solid playoff push this year. I really hope they do. I think they've got some excellent young players coming through. Consistency. Can they keep a good run going? In 13th, this is probably my biggest surprise. I've gone for Coventry City. Newly promoted from League One, the League One champions actually, finishing directly in that mid-table position. It's not unheard of. When Blackburn first came up, they had a solid mid-table finish in their first on their return to the Championship. And Coventry, I do fancy. They're not a small club. They've been in the Championship before. They have some decent attacking threats going forwards. They were putting League One teams to the sword. They have they've got financial stability as well. So I really see Coventry as a surprise. I see them as a breath of fresh air as well. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do, and I've got high hopes. I've got high hopes for Coventry. I think they'll do well. In 12th place, we've gone for Wayne Rooney FC. Oh, hang on, no, that's Derby. Sorry, Derby County. Now, Derby have had an interesting season. They had a terrible start, and since after the January transfer window, bringing in Rooney and essentially having him lead the club, they have shown a little bit of heart and desire. They made a late playoff push. They didn't make it. They didn't quite step over the line, but they showed some decent performances. I don't think Derby are a team that you can ever write off and say, yeah, they're a bottom half of the table team, they're not going to make it. But I'm not sure that they're going to mount a strong playoff push this year. So I think 12th place is actually fairly fair for Derby County. And it could go either way. I could see them finishing as high as 7th, 6th. But equally, I can also see them being in the 17th, 16th spot. So I've kind of averaged it out. In 11th, I've gone for Nottingham Forest. Now, where did it all go wrong for you this year? Forest have been in the playoffs, solidly in the playoffs as well, since Boxing Day. That's about half a year of being pretty much a shoo-in for the playoffs. And then to completely bottle it. I know everyone's talking about Brentford being the bottlers of the Championship season. I think that award solidly goes to Nottingham Forest for... I think they needed 1 point from 3 games to secure the playoffs. And they couldn't do it. And even then they had a 5-goal buffer to Swansea. And they threw that away as well. Terrible. And heads will roll for that. And as a result, I see them finishing in kind of that middle pack for this season. After you have a season like that where you go through heartbreak, there's 2 things that can happen. Either the board backs you and you pull a Leeds, you keep the same kind of core players and you just get stronger and you build from it. Or the board doesn't back you, you lose players, Matty Cash, Lewis Graben, and you start that process all over again. I don't think Forest are getting anywhere near the playoffs this year. In 10th place, I've gone for Preston North End. Now, Preston have had a solid year. I think up until Christmas, they were very consistently in that 6th place spot. And then after lockdown, it very much became a case of nobody wanted that last playoff spot. Cardiff had it for a little bit, then Preston had it. Millwall mounted a push. Nobody really wanted that final spot. So it's all about consistency. I think Preston will be able to keep that same kind of core squad. I did see that Ben Pearson has been linked away potentially to a Premier League move. But they've got a lot of talent there. Barkhausen, but I do think they are a decent side, and who knows? I can see them being in again the race for playoffs this year. I just don't think they're going to quite make that final step. 9th place is Blackburn Rovers. Rovers have had a really good season. They've mounted a solid push for the playoffs towards the end, despite arguably not having their best player in Bradley Dack through injury. A lot of good players have stepped up for them. Armstrong has done really well. Mowbray has done a really decent job with Blackburn, and I can't see them as being contenders. I see them as being threats for the playoffs. They are going to need to bring a little bit more kind of talent, I think, in the transfer window if they're going to mount that really serious push forwards. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rovers actually can be a really threatening side this year. In 8th place, we have Millwall. Now, Millwall have had an excellent season under Gary Rowett. He's really kind of transformed them from being in a relegation kind of fight, scrap team, to really, really challenging for those playoff spots. And in very stereotypical Millwall fashion, they are very, very hard to break down. They're a very physical team. They love a good kind of fight on the ball. But they are tough to break down at the back, and they can go on consistent runs, which is it's that perfect recipe for a successful championship campaign. It's consistency. Can you get that 2 points per game? Win your home games, draw away. That seems to be the real kind of recipe for promotion. And I really think Millwall can, they are going to be a very, very strong contender this year. In 7th, and who I have just missing out on the playoffs, is Bournemouth, one of the relegated teams from the Premier League. Now, it's very tempting to say that the teams that get relegated from the Premier League generally bounce straight back up. With Bournemouth, I don't think this is going to be the case. They have parted ways with Eddie Howe. A lot of their good players, stand-up players, are going to be sold off. Ryan Fraser, Callum Wilson, Josh King, Dominic Solanke maybe. Although I think he still had a new deal, didn't he? Bournemouth are going to go through a turbulent time. They are going to need, I've ranked them as highly as I have because there is, deep within that squad there is talent. They are going to have the parachute payments and kind of that financial backing. But the teams that I've ranked ahead of them, I think are solidly better. So I'm sorry, but I don't see a return to the Premier League for Bournemouth, not this year. And this is what I was saying about the Championship. Once you're in it, it's very, very difficult to get yourself out of it. So Bournemouth could be down here for a while. In 6th place, and just scraping into the playoffs, I've gone for Huddersfield Town. Now, I've got a very good feeling about Huddersfield this year, and it's not difficult to see why. They have appointed Carlos Corberán as their new coach after parting ways with the Cowley brothers. And Corberán was the Leeds under-23 manager. Many consider him as the Bielsa understudy. Plays that very kind of Bielsa style, attacking football. And we know a lot of Leeds players are potentially heading there on loan to be under Corberán to get some first-team experience. Robbie Gotts, Mateusz Bogusz are all being linked with a move to Huddersfield. And I think Huddersfield are going to be a real force this year. So 6th place, I think is a fair position for them. In 5th place, I've gone for Swansea City. Now, Swansea have always been lurking around the top half of the table. At the start of this year, they were top, and a lot of people were backing them for automatic promotion. Didn't quite happen. They fell off a little bit. The consistency that we're looking for wasn't quite there. But they have a lot of talented players, and they've used the loan market very, very wisely. If they're able to do that again and build on it, I easily see Swansea returning back to the playoffs, and again mounting a decent challenge. Players like Andre Ayew, they're dangerous going forwards. I think Swansea can make moves, and I think they are a safe bet for a top 6 finish next season. My 4th place team are going to be Brentford. Now, my heart breaks for Brentford, it really does. I've experienced the position that you're in all too well, and it's not nice. It's not pleasant. Thomas Frank has done really, really well this year. I rate him highly as a manager, despite some of the things that he said about Leeds. And like it or not, Brentford have got a very, very good kind of core base of players. I know that they're not going to be able to keep Ollie Watkins or Said Benrahma, who are going to Premier League teams. But that's not all that Brentford have. Their midfield, Norgard, Jensen, De Silva, all of these players, although they might not necessarily be picked up by a Premier League team, are far and away in the kind of upper category of the Championship. A rock-solid defence. Pontus Jansson, as much as I banter him, he is a good defender. Ethan Pinnock has stepped up. Rico Henry is fantastic going forwards. And I think David Raya as well is a good goalkeeper, despite, the loss in the playoff final essentially being on him. Are Brentford going to do it this year? I think they've got a really good chance. And I think 4th place is going to be a realistic position for them. I don't think they're going to fall off by any means, and I think they are going to be solidly challenging for the top 2 places all season, and they're a good bet for promotion. In 3rd place, I've gone for Norwich City. Now, Norwich have already made more signings, actually, in the transfer window now than they did when they got promoted to the Premier League, which is a little bit confusing. Bringing in the likes of Dowell from Wigan, and making a couple of overseas transfers as well. Is this all to mask over the fact that they're going to lose quite a few good players to the Premier League? Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis, Todd Cantwell, Emiliano Buendia. All these players could be going, but I think Norwich have got a really kind of good core, a good base. Again, they are going to have those parachute payments, and it looks like they're spending them. So I think Norwich are going to be a real threat, and I think they are also going to be up and around the top 2 for the entirety of the season. Now, heading into my top 2, the teams that I've got going for automatic promotion. In 2nd, I've gone for Watford, the last remaining team who were relegated from the Premier League. And despite the fact that they seem to go through managers like no one's business, I really like Watford. And the players that they've got in that team, really, they don't belong in the Championship. Ben Foster is a top half of the Premier League keeper, I believe. I don't think Troy Deeney's going anywhere. Doucouré, Ismail Assar, who's actually been linked away. This is almost looking like a budget Wolves team, and I see Watford being able to make the jump back up at the first time of asking, which is an achievement, but I think Watford can do it. Which means my champions for the Championship season next year is going to go to Cardiff. Now, I was really impressed with Cardiff, especially coming back from lockdown. A really solid team, and the most important thing was their consistency, averaging the 2 points per game, having an incredibly solid defensive back line. Neil Harris has seemed to have got this team working, gelling together. And they have got some magic players that can create something going forwards. I think Cardiff are the whole package, and I see them doing it this year. And I can predict Cardiff doing it comfortably. I don't see another kind of team having the same kind of consistency that they will. And I think they're going to do it. They are going to become the champions this year. So that is my table for the Championship season. Let me know what you guys think, if I've ranked your team too low, or if you think that I've highly overestimated your team's position. Let me know down in the comments. Put your rankings down. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really helps me out and keeps me motivated to do this. And I'm really looking forward to when the new season starts, and I shall be bringing you as much content as I can. And as always, stay safe.